Okay, thanks for joining us on our very first video of our new flipped classroom. I want to start it out, though, with an opportunity for you to learn a study technique that works really, really well. And it's not something you haven't heard before, but it is going to be put into a name that you may not have heard before, okay? And that name is Tasq. Now, there's a reason why the A is small. It's because it really doesn't apply to what we're doing. But the word task, or the acronym TASK, stands for three words. It stands for taking notes, summarizing, and questioning. Now, I know, no one likes taking notes. Everyone hates it, right? You sit there and you scribble around and you wonder what you're talking about. And a lot of you are saying, why are you teaching me this when I already know this? Well, the fact of the matter is we don't do this very well. Taking notes is not something that you do because you like to. It's something that you do because you have to. Summarizing, why would you summarize when you've already taken notes? And questions, well, I'm constantly asking you to ask questions, but very rarely do you ever ask them. And everyone knows that you get marks, right, because of the answers you've got, not because of the questions you ask. The problem is, though, that once you stop asking questions, stop learning, okay? This is one great big stop sign that constantly is telling you that you can and cannot learn anything and will stop you at any time, right? So we're going to get into that in just a couple of seconds, and we'll go through what each of those three things mean. But just to give you an idea of why we're doing this, everyone at one time or another has felt like this guy has, right? You felt bored in class, you're dealing with something you've already learned at another time. For that matter, it might be done in a way that you don't appreciate it. Or worse yet, is you really don't understand what's being taught, but you don't feel that you have any reason to say anything. Well, we're going to try to stop that, because in a lot of cases, this is the reason why. The old idea that you sit there and you listen to a teacher lecture and they show you what to do and they go through the steps and they do all the stuff that you, well, that you hate. Because if you're already ahead of the game, like this guy is, well, you don't feel like you're learning anything. You are, but you don't feel that way. So here's how we're going to fix this. You're going to get a series of videos at a regular basis that are going to take you through what you need to learn to start your next day. And the first step you have to take is to take notes. Now, notes don't have to be taken like this necessarily, okay? They can be done as a mind map. They could be done as a different type of organizer. These are notes, by the way, taken by someone who's a lot more visual in their approach. These are notes by someone who's very organized and likes to have it all written down this way. Then there's the traditional way of having headings and subheadings and sub-subheadings. Whatever works for you works for you. I'm not going to teach you a way to specifically do notes, because what works for me may not be effective for you. We did talk about the Cornell system of doing the folded over page. Some of you saw that as useful, but you stopped using it. It's time to go back to it. It's time to start taking notes properly. The reason is, and I heard this quote just this week, and I wish I remember who I heard it from so I could actually accredit it to him. Even the palest of inks retain better than the sharpest mind. You might think you're remembering everything, but in the long run, this works better than this. And if only because you can't go back and reread this one. All right, you're kind of stuck with what you got. So the idea is to take notes. Now I'm going to ask you to take notes in class too, and I always have, but it's going to be very important when we start going through the videos. All right. Number two is S, and it means summarize. Everyone thinks they know what summarization is, and most of you do. It's taking the information and briefly retelling the important information in your own words and your own thoughts to form new ideas. It's called metacognition. Okay? It gives you a chance to take what you've learned in class and adapt it to what you're thinking. Okay? I've said this when it comes to teaching in the classroom. If you got to teach what you learn, you'll learn 90% better than if you did it the other way around. It gives you a chance to put it into your own words. So you have to get the idea of the text, the gist of the text, whether that's a book, a piece of paper, or a video. You need to grasp more meaning. You need to stop and think about what you're reading or watching, and then you have to make sure you put it in your own words. And the third part of task is to question. Now, the reason I say question is once you ask a question, you start the learning process. Once you answer it, it stops. And you've seen this in class. Someone throws out a question, another person answers it, and then the conversation ends. More importantly, when you're sitting there with your hand up in the air trying to answer a question, you're not thinking about what's going on in class, you're thinking about what's going through your mind, because you don't want to answer incorrectly and look like a goof in front of everybody else. Questions are guaranteed in life, answers aren't, so you need to start asking questions. More importantly, the only way you're going to get deeper into a subject or understand it better is by asking questions. So what you need to do now is to write down questions every single time you watch one of the videos. And more importantly, try to keep in the line of the cue chart that we've been working on in class all year to make your questions better. Okay, so what does this all mean? Well, it means this. You are going to get a selection of videos to watch at night that will pertain to the next day's stuff, not the stuff that we're doing in class that point, okay? So the next day's stuff. You're going to watch it and you're going to note what you've seen. Then you're going to look at your notes and you're going to summarize what you believe the work is all about. Summarize is not a V, it's a Z. Okay. You need to summarize what you've seen and what you've taken down in your notes. And third, you need to question. Now, everyone says, well, how many questions do you want? Well, I can tell you right now to put a maximum or minimum on it isn't fair, because you may have many more questions than others and you might think you have to stick by that. At the same time, there's no such thing as seeing something and having no questions. Something pops up in your head. Write them down and we'll talk about them in class. Okay? So, you'll see the video, you'll do the task, and then we'll come to school and we'll work on the process and see how everything works out. All right? Try it tonight. You got the first video to look at. It's coming up next.